I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Debbie with the City of Redwood City Water Department. Um, I manage the water conservation programs here for Redwood City. We have some homegrown programs that are not listed here, but you can always find them on our website, redwoodcity.org/conservation. And we'll be hosting another one of these classes, I believe next week, a succulent class. So hope you'll join us for that. Tonight's topic is California native plant FAQs, and our instructor is Juanita Salisbury. And when I turn over the screen to her, I'll let her introduce herself. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So all attendees are muted by default. The instructor will pause periodically for questions. Audience questions are encouraged, and there's two ways to ask. You can raise your hand, and the moderator, which is me, will unmute you. You can ask your question, or you can raise your hand. You can do the Q&A moderator, and I'll read the questions to the instructor. So let's see. So here's the raise your hand function, and here's the Q&A function in Zoom. The webinar is being recorded and will be made available later. And BOSCA, a little bit about BOSCA, Bay Area Water and Conservation Agency, Supply and Conservation Agency, I've only been saying this for many, many years now, represents 26 agencies that include cities, water districts, water company, and a university that purchase wholesale water from San Francisco Regional Water System. The BOSCA member agencies provide water to 1.8 million people and over 40,000 businesses and community organizations in Alameda, Santa Clara, and San Mateo counties. BOSCA's goal is a high quality supply of water at a fair price. So for many years, most of the water agencies that belong to BOSCA have been doing indoor conservation, but outdoor water use really represents the single largest untapped opportunity for water conservation in the BOSCA service area. So outdoor water use reduction through the use of water efficient plants and innovative techniques can help conserve water and ensure that the future water supply needs of our communities are met. So that's what we do with this lecture series. And we also provide rebates that help folks to reduce their water consumption outdoors. Our Lawn Be Gone program, very popular. You can get $1 depending upon the water agency. Redwood City offers $2 per square foot to replace your turf with low water use plants. And then we also have a rain barrel program that's in collaboration with the Water Pollution Prevention Program, San Mateo County. So anybody in San Mateo County can get a rebate for a rain barrel. And then if your participating water agency also provides a rebate, most of the time you get the whole rain barrel, the whole amount paid for. So it's really a nice program. We also have a rebate for a smart controller, the irrigation controller, and this is fantastic. You can change your irrigations just from your phone, which is fantastic. It uses weather data to determine how much water the plants need. So I really believe this is a very, very useful tool. And then we have our optional rain garden rebate that you can apply for with the Lawn Be Gone program. And these are Valley Water programs. So if you are in the Valley Water area, Santa Clara Valley, they also have a sustainable landscape program where they pay $2 per square foot. So I would encourage you to go ahead and go to their website and check that out. And then there's other resources around the Bay Area that Valley Water promotes. South Bay Green Gardening, videos at watersavings.org, and you can report your water waste. And that's it. A little more about Valley Water. And there's more classes coming up. April 11th, that's ours. Growing succulents in the Bay Area, creating native habitat. I won't read them all to you, but I would suggest going to Bosca's website and you can watch pre-recorded videos as well as register for upcoming. And then we have our Waterwise gardening in the Bay Area as well. So this is a really great tool here. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Anita.
Thanks, Debbie.
So
All
I'm gonna stop sharing.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Let me pull my screen up. All right. Slideshow from the beginning. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm going to turn my camera off to save some bandwidth. But be sure if you have any questions to raise your hand as we go along, and I will do my best to answer since these are frequently asked questions. All right, so turning off, there we go. All righty. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Juanita Salisbury. I'm a California landscape architect, and I here in Palo Alto, I take care of the Primrose Way pollinator gardens, which we started back in 2016. And you can follow me on Facebook or Instagram at the Primrose Way Pollinator Garden. I also have a YouTube channel, Primrose Way. If you don't like social media, I do have a website, which is primrosewaypollinatorgarden.com. As I mentioned before, we have a number of native plant gardens here in Palo Alto. And so first question, where can I see some native plants? And our gardens here in Palo Alto are always open. So if you come in off Embarcadero Road, the first garden you'll come to is our Primrose Way garden. This garden was started in 2016. That was the first one. And then we've added a number of different gardens. We have the Island Drive Garden, Arcadia Place Garden, Hopkins Avenue, Gwynda Street Garden, and the Churchill Street Pollinator Garden and the West Greenwich Place Pollinator Garden. This one's the newest one. It's really nice. And we are connecting these two gardens on the strip between the sidewalk and the street. And we're calling that the Embarcadero Road Pollinator Corridor. So we'll have lots of connections for lots of creatures and other things to move between the gardens. And if you come down on the 21st to the Rinconada Library, that's month. On the 21st, Palo Alto is holding a resource fair at the Rinconada Library from 1 until 4 p.m. We're doing tours of these gardens, and we are also giving away some Dudleya farinosa, which is one of our native coastal succulents that I've grown from seed. So a lot of goodies that are being given away. Again, that's April 21st at the Rinconada Library from 1 till 4. I'll be there. My volunteers will be there. So hopefully I'll see some of you people there. So some basic questions. First of all, why California native plants? I'm going to talk about those in some depth. And what are some easy ways to get started planting a California native habit? That should be, it will turn into a habit, but it's actually a habitat. And how do I California native plants? So why California native plants? Well, California is a biodiversity hotspot. We are of all the hotspots, the biodiversity hotspots on the planet, we are one of about 30 or so on the entire planet. And there's lots to choose from here. We have almost 8,000 species of plants, some found nowhere else on the planet, more than any other state in the United States. Another reason is that the native plants have abundant ecological benefits. They support wildlife as well as pollinators and other insects. And the big one here, water conservation. Many species are drought tolerant. Some can get by on rainfall alone, so that makes taking care of them super easy, which I like. And we want to be able to help the environment. These are a great way to do it. We can help insect species, including pollinators, which are declining worldwide. In some areas of the world, insect species have declined 70%. So as a bonus of planting native plants, you're going to be helping the entire environment. And you cannot overestimate the impact of these native plants. What I'm talking about tonight is just the tip of the iceberg. The effects that these plants have are far-reaching. And these are some of the photographs that I've taken over the years of the different creatures using different plants, lots of pollinators. I I know what uses what plants. I've been monitoring the gardens weekly for 7 years, so I have a lot of information about what works and what doesn't work. So first question, why or where can I find out more information about native plants for your area in the Bay Area? My go-to resource for finding information about native plants is calscape.org. And this is a screenshot of their landing page. Now they're going to be redoing this website, so it's not going to look like this anymore, but the information will still be there. And basically, if you go to their landing page, you can search for plants by name, but you can also either click on the map or enter an address to find out what grows in your area. And they break it down for you. They make it super easy to find information. So all plants, we can see that they have 7,964, and they break it down by trees, shrubs, perennials, annuals, grasses, succulents, vines, etc. So super easy to navigate the site. You can find nurseries. So this is where can I find plants? Super easy to find them. If you find a plant that you like, as that plant, and you can click on the link to the website, and that will take you to the nursery where you can look at their inventory to see if they have it in stock. So question number one, where am I going to find that? You can find it here at Calscape. I need help with design and inspiration. They have a great section here. I highly recommend reading what they have here. It's going to be very helpful for you, as well as they have some information about butterflies, which you probably are thinking, what does that have to do with anything? And that's all tied in with water conservation, and I'll get to that in a moment. As I said, these plants are critical for water conservation. Many of these species are drought tolerant. As I said before, some species can get by on rainfall alone. And your question might be, next question is, well, how can I find out how much water plants use? Here's an easy website to go to. The Water Use Classification of Landscape Species is an online searchable database for plant factors of individual plant species that is published by the University of California Cooperative Extension and the California Department of Water Resources. And there's the link there. And so basically what they do is they rank plants based on how much, like a percentage of like a lawn, turf grass. So a lawn is 100%. And so you might want to know, okay, so very low water use plants are 0 to 10% of what a lawn, a non-native lawn, would use. Low plants have 20 to 30% of what a lawn would use, medium 40 to 60%, high water use plants 70 to 100%. SLA just refers to a special landscape area, which is like a swimming pool or other open water features. So super easy to find out how much water plants actually use. And it's based on this plant factor. I don't know why they just don't call it percentage, which is what it is. So that's how you find out how much water plants use. Um, and you might ask yourself, well, what's an easy way uh, to get started with planting a California native habitat? And I'm going to give you some specific plants to use, but I'm also going to give you a system to use because every garden is different. So it's better to use a very simple system to help guide your decisions rather than telling you exactly what to plant. I will give you some specific recommendations, but it's up to you to decide what's going to work best for your situation in terms of space, in terms of preferences for color and texture and fragrance. That's on you. You have to decide those things. As I said, specific plants won't work in every garden, but if you have a system for decision making, that system absolutely does work. And here it is. Here's the secret. And the secret is maximize your success by prioritizing the planting of keystone species. The first question, what's a keystone species? So a keystone species plays a pivotal role in an ecosystem. Without it, the entire ecosystem would be dramatically different or might even cease to exist. These species have low functional redundancy, meaning that no other species can fully replace their ecological niche. That means move that species, there isn't anything that can take its place that does what this plant does. So, and they do that because they're very connected to other species. So the takeaway insight here is that if you plant multiple keystone species, you end up with the high functional redundancy to protect ecosystem stability. What that means is that you have a lot of backups. So you want to have lots of keystone species in your garden. So if a question comes up, how can I increase my chances of success? This is the answer. Plant those keystone species. How do I find out? Next question is, how do I find out what a keystone species is? Let's talk about some of the benefits first. So you might ask yourself, what are some of the benefits um, to planting these? You have an amplified impact. So keystone species have a huge impact, disproportionate impact on the overall health and diversity of an ecosystem compared to their abundance. So you might have like one or two of these plants in the environment. That doesn't mean that their impact is just small because it's just one or two. It's because they're keystones, they have a huge impact. Okay. And when you plant those first, you jumpstart the development of a thriving habitat. Another benefit is adaptation. Many keystone plants are particularly well adapted to the local environment. And so by planting those first, allows them to establish quickly, and that creates a foundation and foster the conditions suitable for other native species to thrive. So how do you maximize your success? Plant keystones first, and that kind of prepares the way to add new plants and add more plants. Another benefit, as I mentioned before, connection. Keystone species act as connectors in the environment, creating a ripple effect of connections throughout the environment. And this is where I've been talking about how things are with these keystone species and native plants in general as sort of the tip of the iceberg. The connections are seen and unseen, and I keep discovering new things all the time. And I have been planting native gardens religiously for the last 7 years, and I constantly see new things. And that's the beauty of these gardens, is that they keep revealing information, which is a wonderful thing. The framework they provide, they create living physical structures and niches that benefit a variety of other plant and animal species. If you want to save time, so a question that comes up is like, how can I do this fast? If you plant these high impact species first, you maximize the ecological benefit sooner. So I would say instantly. You have an instant benefit. Um, and you leverage that power to create that network of ready-made connections the second you plant a keystone species. It's economical. You achieve maximal ecological benefits with limited resources and minimal effort. Plant one thing. And you know, you can even plant seeds if you want to be really easy. Seeds are super easy. Scalability. This concept can be applied to gardens of all sizes. So what works in my small space, the same thing that works in your large space. Start with that keystone species. So, when you ask yourself the gardening questions, frame it in, how can a keystone species solve or answer this question for me? So how do you identify those native keystone plant species local for my area? Well, let's go back to Calscape and look up things. But um, this is where it gets interesting with Calscape. And so I'm going to blow your minds here for a second in how to identify what might be a keystone plant species. So what's an easy way to know? Consider a function. Plants are the primary producers of food. So energy from the sun gets converted by plants, eaten by insects that are then eaten by other creatures, turns into birds. So you can, another benefit that you can do is that you can turn starlight into birds by planting natives, because native insects generally only eat the native plants they evolved with. Insects are super picky about what they eat. And so if you like birds, if you plant a lot of native plants in your yard, you're going to have a bunch of birds living in there. So the answer is those plants that efficiently channel the sun's energy into the food web in ways that other plants cannot. We're talking about you, non-native species. Those are likely to be keystone species. And so plants, plants are decorations. They're food. So think about a plant that's as food. Will attract many native pollinators and other insects, birds, and other organisms. And among other things, keystone plants provide food. You go back to the Calscape website where it shows butterflies, you can look at a particular plant and see how many different species one particular plant might feed. So if it comes down to a choice between two plants, you can say, okay, this one feeds 75 species of butterflies and moths. This one's only 20. If you plant the one that feeds more, that's more of a keystone species feeder or plant because of the number of species that it feeds. Super easy. So that's a simple way to find out, um, you know, what's a keystone species. You can also look, as I said, go back to Calscape, which is going to help you sort out which plants feed multiple species. And this is a screenshot where I've pulled up the um, the plants, but what I've got listed here are the plants and the number of insects that they feed, ranking those. 228 for the arroyo willow, and so forth. So you can really look to see all kinds of things here. And I've ranked these, and you can like have them ranked, and which I've done here by the number of butterflies that are hosted on that plant. Um, and these plants, you will see an explosion of life. And that's what I have seen, and it's pretty awesome. You can also find keystone native plants for different regions. This is published by the National Wildlife Federation. If you go to their website, you can find the different kinds of keystone plants here. Host plants that feed young caterpillars, 90% of the butterflies and moths, and then different kinds that feed specialist bees. But right now we're interested in feeding birds. So if you feed the caterpillars first, everything kind of falls into place. And you have trees, they break it down into oaks, cherries, and so forth. It's a really interesting page. I think it's like, this is one page, this is the second page, a screenshot of both these things. And they make it super easy for you to pick out what works. However, I'm going to give you some, I'm just going to give you some goodies here that I recommend. And these are Juanita's recommended species to start with. And when I say these shrubs do multiple things, they're just so easy to take care of. They're so easy because if you plant during the winter time when it's raining, you probably will never have to water these after winter. And so if you only have room for some shrubs, and I've listed the scientific name here because I find for the shrubs that the common names are too variable. But I mean, people get confused about what that means, but there's so many different species of Arctostaphylos. Some are ground covers, some are shrub forms, some are tree forms. Site and see what will work best for your situation. Do you need a ground cover? Do you need a shrub? Do you need a tree? Same for the ceanothus. People call these blue blossoms or California lilacs, but it's really not very descriptive because they do come in different forms. The Eriogonums, people call these buckwheats, and people know buckwheats is something that you make pancakes out of. Again, lots of different species of they feed so many different kinds of butterflies, lots to choose from here. And then baccharis or coyote bush, as some people call it, some grow as ground coveries, some grow more upright, just super easy. These are kind of like anchor shrubs for me, the baccharis, because they're just literally do not water them after I plant them. If I plant them during the winter when it's raining. Okay. Okay, for trees, three that I like, super easy, oaks, maples, and cherries. And oaks that you can plant, scrub oaks if you don't have much space, for a big oak tree, maples, lots of different maples that we can grow here, prunus, a few different species of the prunus that we can plant. And because of these amplified effects of keystone plant species, you can, and so people say, well, how do I get started? The answer to that is plant one keystone plant species, whether it's a shrub or a tree. Maybe plant one tree and two shrubs. It's almost a guarantee that these will work for you. So, but some of the things that we have that I absolutely love for the gardens, and this is at our Hopkins Avenue pollinator garden. Oh, I see a question. Deb, you want to read that question off for me?
So I have to unmute myself, of course.
Are all these keystone? I see it.
Sure, it says, are these keystone plants California natives?
Yes, they are. Absolutely. I'm kind of a native plant. Um, I don't know. I'm almost kind of a little bit of a militant about native plants because I see non-native plants as taking up, as kind of living rent-free in the environment, and because they don't provide anything in return, they don't feed insects, they don't share resources with other plants, they don't do anything for the ecosystem, so they're kind of like freeloaders. And you know, they don't pay any rent. They take, but they don't give back. And all the plants I'm talking about are access. Yes, so yes, the presentation will be on the Bosca's YouTube channel after the meeting, along with about 30 of my other talks that I've given. Um, just so you can scroll back through and watch some of the more recent ones. They're all there's slight variations on a theme. I'm also doing a few more talks for Bosca this month. Um, so if you wanted to, uh, you know, sign on for those two, sort of a continuation of this series. But great question. Yeah, no, it'll be there for you.
Thanks for answering that.
Um, yeah, so we have Quercus lobata, the valley oak, used to be 61% of the tree cover in the Santa Clara Valley. Now it's only about 1%. So if you want to be changing the environment, plant one of these babies. I absolutely love the valley oak. There's nothing really that compares to oaks in terms of ecosystem services. Provides critical support to the entire ecosystem. This is the anchor here at the Hopkins Avenue garden. They're deciduous, which means they drop all their leaves each year, and those need to be left in place underneath to support the health of the tree. So when I tell you later that taking care of these gardens is way easier than anything like a non-native garden, you just leave the leaves where they are. Even if they fall on top of other plants, I leave my leaves that fall on top of other plants because eventually those break down and they drop and they disappear. They don't smother plants. Plants are very good at poking up through those leaves. So the less you do, the better. So I just leave the leaves. Sometimes I brush them off here and there, but for the most part, because I'm just that, I like to say, use best practices or just be busy, just leave these things alone. Super easy to take care of. So with the valley oak, they have a taproot that goes down to the water table. Here in Palo Alto, that's about 10 feet down. And then they pump that water up to the lateral surface roots and they share that water with other plants. So how you can be successful is when you plant these keystones is that they're going to share their goodies and set up communication networks underground. And that takes care of about 95% of your work for you. You plant underneath with native plants like Monardella species, which is coyote mint, which smells like mint. That can be good for the health of the tree. They're insect factories. They can live a long time, add value to real estate. So many benefits. Right. Um, a specific example that I like to use, a lot of people like the Ceanothus horizontalis. So you're going, what can I put in place of my lawn? We don't walk on it, but we want something green, ground covery. Lots of different varieties of the Ceanothus to take over from the lawn. And the great thing about Ceanothus is that it does not like to be watered in the summertime. So those water bills are going to decrease drastically. If this was a lawn, you'd be watering this every week. This does not have to be watered at all during the summertime. It's fragrant, you get blue blossoms, and it's evergreen, which means it looks good and lush and green all year, so it doesn't go brown like a lawn would. So, um, you know, easy plant to install. I really do like the Ceanothus, and this is a shrub form that, if you want really specific examples, I absolutely love Ceanothus maritima. So this is a coastal variety, but it grows great here in Palo Alto. Valley violet, evergreen, so it stays green all year. And then it has these beautiful fragrant blue blossoms in January, supporting our native bumblebees that come out in January. Bumblebees like to forage in winter. And this is the black-tail bumblebee, and you can see that she's got her tongue out because she wants some nectar. Super low water use. and a larval host for dozens of butterfly and moth species. So, um, you know, if you if you wanted to start easy, you can plant these just about anywhere and they will do great. They might be a little slow to take off the first year, but after that, super easy. Another example, remember I said I really like Arctostaphylos, or people want to call it manzanita, but this is Arctostaphylos densiflora, which means it's um, dense, I guess. And this is a variety called Howard McMinn. I think that this is a native up to Sonoma County, but I like it down here. Um, Evergreen, this is actually the one in my front yard. White blooms in January, supporting 78 caterpillar species and 13 pollen specialist bee species. They also provide berries, nectar, and shelter for many other organisms. Remember, I talked about how these things are connected to so many other things. And so, again, just a wonderful shrub. You know, they make a nice hedge. They grow about 4 to 5 feet tall. And they're just like really, literally, I have not watered this since I planted it. Super easy plant. So water bill goes down every year. Um, and this is the yellow-faced bumblebee. You can see she's got her proboscis stuck out there and she's getting the nectar inside those tubular flowers. Another specific example, this is not on my preferred list, but um, it's another one that I try to squeeze in once I have other things. If you really like pink flowers, maybe a question is, what can I plant that has a pink flower on it? One of my absolute favorites are our native gooseberries, currants, otherwise known in scientific speak is Ribes malvaceum. And there are a lot of different kinds of ribes. So somebody's got a question. Did I say Arctostaphylos densiflora doesn't need water in summer? That's absolutely correct. It does not. I mean, some people might like water them deeply, like once a month during the summertime, but you can actually kill Arctostaphylos by overwatering it. And that happens because of the fungal associations underground. So the Arctostaphylos will team up with some of the native mycorrhiza, the native fungus underground to exchange nutrients. And if you water during the summertime, what happens is that you can kill the mycorrhiza. And when you kill the mycorrhiza, because mycorrhiza, the fungus, don't like moist, warm soil, what happens is that encourages bacteria to grow. The bacteria will eat the fungus and kill that off. And then the Arctostaphylos doesn't have their buddies to exchange nutrients with anymore. And so, yeah, don't water your Arctostaphylos during the summertime. I mean, if you think it looks dusty, you could like spritz it off maybe once during the summer, but seriously, does not need water during the summertime. Ribes malvaceum, this is at the Hopkins Avenue Garden. This thing puts on a show in December. So people say, oh, we want winter color. And so many things here in California bloom during the winter because we have the most mild winters here in the Bay Area. And this beautiful Christie Ridge ribes just puts on such a show. Here again is our black-tailed bumblebee nectaring on this shrub. Wonderful plant, super low water use, blooms for weeks during the winter, 5 to 8 feet tall, 5 feet wide, host plant to 3 confirmed and 76 likely species of butterflies and moths. So just a really nice plant to have. This one is deciduous, but not for long. She will drop leaves for a little while, but then she leaves out very quickly with these nice fresh green leaves. And it's just, she's just beautiful. I really like ribes. There's also at the Hopkins Avenue Garden, we have Ribes aureum, the golden currant, and that thing has the most delicious berries during the summertime. And so when I do my weekly rounds, because I do monitor the gardens weekly, I always stop to have a snack there. Um, and I know where all the treats are like that. So I build in um, my snacks into the gardens so I have fuel to keep me going. Um, Speaking of food, another one that's not on my list of like the first like four shrubs and three trees, but another one if you like something you were like, what native can I plant that will give me um, food, more food. So this is another great one. This is also called the huckleberry, Vaccinium ovatum. It's in the blueberry family. So we do have like a native blueberry. And this is in my side yard. This gets morning sun and to about midday and then afternoon shade. Pretty low water use. I like to water it maybe once a month during the summertime. Blooms in February, and this thing is covered in pollinators. And then I get these little blueberries during the summer months. And these are very intensely flavored blueberries. They're really tasty. Um, Likely larval host to over 50 species of moths and butterflies, makes a great upright hedge. And this is the only time I recommend using fertilizer to get something to grow quickly. They can grow very slowly, but cottonseed meal is like candy to these things. They can put on a couple feet of growth per year when you give them cottonseed meal. I have no idea why that is, but a great plant if you're looking for something that gives you food. A lot of great food shrubs out there. Don't be scared, but you're like, okay, so I don't have room for a big oak. So what trees can I fit into my yard if there are existing trees or not much space? So here are the dozen examples from my tiny yard, and I have top picks for drought tolerance. And even with more plants than last year, I'm using less water than last summer. So I always compare my water use to see how I'm doing. And I'm actually watering less and less and less. That might be because I'm just getting lazier and lazier, but seriously, I don't water these things. So I have planted, remember I said the maples? So we have Acer macrophyllum, a wonderful, kind of slow growing, big floppy leaves on this thing. It likes to be in the shade. Another one that I love, love, love is, and this is partially deciduous, so she will drop about half her leaves during the winter time, and it grows in a narrow situation. So great for a side yard. Cercocarpus betuloides, the mountain mahogany. Um, I even have, yes, I have a willow in my front yard, and that gets watered once a month deeply in the summertime. And I put this in because of the connections it has to the environment. Um, the elderberry, I'm just going to go through these Prunus salicifolia. This one, I always end up with a ton of seedlings that I give away for people. This I don't water at all. And I actually plant seedlings here and there. And once I plant the seedlings in the wintertime, I don't water them. They don't like it in the summertime. Acer negundo, this one gets watered once a month deeply. Um, this is our Modesto ash tree that's in our front yard. That was a street tree. I've got a couple of hazelnuts because I like hazelnuts. This gets once a month in the summertime. Prunus virginiana, um, once a month. And so you can see that these are all the big um, um, keystone shrubs. So I have lots of redundancy in my backyard. Arctostaphylos glauca. This was planted, this is actually much bigger than this. This was taken a few years ago. And this thing, I do not water it at all. It's because I don't want to kill it. And it was grown from seed, and I want to turn it into a tree. And it's probably about 5 feet tall now. I planted about 3 years ago, and last year put on 2 feet of growth. So it's really fast growing. Cercis occidentalis, our native redbud. These are great little trees if you like pink flowers in the spring. They also fix nitrogen into the soil, so good for soil conditioning. And then Heteromelias arbutifolia, our native toyon. Once I plant these, I don't water them afterwards because they don't like it either because of that fungal association. So with 7 pollinator gardens and a 1/4 mile long garden, I'm going to plant things that I don't have to take care of. And that's how you do it. You just plant things that can take care of themselves. Some shrubs, people say, well, I don't want my yard to look dry and desiccated. What can I plant to achieve that lush appearance to my garden? If you have about 75% of your shrubs um, evergreen in your yard with a nice dark green and glossy leaf, you can keep everything looking lush. So like Vaccinium ovatum, like our native coffee berry, look at those green glossy leaves. This is an evergreen shrub that, again, low water use. Prunus salicifolia, which I mentioned before, the heteromelies. My Arctostaphylos is a ground cover. Um, and Ribes viburnifolium, again, another Ribes. This one is evergreen. And these plants look like this all year round. And this does not look dry to me. So you can have a lush garden. So that's the answer. And again, this is a keystone species, that's a keystone species, um, and they basically take care of themselves, which is pretty awesome. How do I know how many plants to get? Well, when you go to Calscape, they will tell you how big a plant gets at maturity. Believe it, because these plants, once they grow to their full mature size, they will get to their mature diameter. It will happen. So what you want to do is measure out your yard, maybe on some graph paper, and use a square to be like 1 inch as a guideline. And then you can draw a circle at the mature diameter of that plant. So like for these yellow ones, these are a couple feet in diameter. And along this pathway here, you can see that, okay, I'm going to need 7 of those. And that's how you figure it out. And that's basically how you do design too. So you get the spacing correct. Um, and this is just a starting point. Eventually you might want to add some things under here, maybe some vines, but this is a good starting place to basically give yourself that foundation and that spacing to start with. So always consider how big these are going to get, that mature diameter. Believe it, they will get that big. Might take like 5 years, but it will happen. So another question that comes up, what is the implications to native plants as food? And because the native plants will attract a variety of native pollinators and other insects, using best practices will help them to complete their life cycles. You don't want to plant these things, and this is always something just to be mindful of, is that these things will come. And so you want them to be able to live their lives out. You don't want them to come and die in your yard. And so the ways to help them to complete their life cycles is to just use best practices, which are, how do I care for my native plant habitat? And as I mentioned before, native gardens are less maintenance than a non-native garden with a lawn. Basically, most of your work is just going to be weeding. And that's why that's at the top of the list here. Irrigate your plants to establish them. So plant during the raining season. I'm looking out the window here and I see that it's raining. So you still have time to get them in because the ground is cool, it's moist, and you can, that's really I start planting probably in October, anticipating the rainy season, and I try to finish up planting during April, and because after that it's like planting season is over for me. Irrigation should encourage roots to search for the water, infrequent but deeply just outside the root ball. So those roots really have to go and look for that water because that way they can stretch out and find things in the soil, those mycorrhizal connections and connections with other plants, because plants are social. They tell each other things. That sounds weird, but it's actually true. Prune sparingly and to control dried up, dead material for fire safety. So I like to leave the seed heads on things because until about April, because seed heads feed birds like finches, and they will come and they will eat those seeds out of the seed heads. and that's a good place for insects to hide as well. Um, don't fertilize, amend sparingly. I basically use leaves to mulch things, and then if people don't like the way that leaves look, you can like put down the one chip thick wood bark mulch on top to hold things in place. If you like that more uniform look, leave areas of bare dirt for nests. What that means is that most native bees, and we have about 1,600 species of native bees in California, 400 here in the Bay Area. Um, and most of those, about 70% of these bees will nest underground. Um, don't use leaf blowers in planted areas. I cannot stress this enough. When you blow leaves away, you're blowing out larvae. And larvae are those, they're the intermediate stage of the sunlight turning into birds. If you blow those larvae away, you don't get to turn sunlight into birds. So the way to create that magic is just do less. And don't use leaf blowers. You don't use pesticides, herbicides, or fungicides. So you don't want to like kill stuff. With enough keystone species, nature will find a balance. And so you'll have enough predators, you'll have enough fungus that the insects will fight it out. The plants will fight it out and establish a balance. It and that, you can ask yourself, if you run into like, oh, what's happening here? Go back to, what is the keystone doing here to make this happen? How is it supporting the ecological balance? And they will find it. Nesting in shelter, many insects spend their time, a lot of time as a larva or an egg, months or years. I mean, most insects just live long enough to reproduce. And a lot of these larvae overwinter inside of stems. That's why I say don't prune, because there are a lot of hollow stems on plants, or they hang out in the leaf litter. They'll eat stuff here and then drop down into the leaf litter to hide from predators, because all of these are a meal for something else, whether it be the wasps or birds. Um, these are tasty bags of nutrients, and they're also bags of moisture. And so what the other things that these insects do is they transfer moisture through the biosystem. So when you plant native, this is another way you can store moisture. Think of these as little biological rain barrels. Okay. And that gets eaten. They suck up, and then that gets turned into these, and those get stuck into birds. So leave the leaves. Long story short. And remember that can you add California natives that aren't keystone species? Absolutely. Remember that your gardens are dynamic. What that means is that things are changing over time. The relationships between the plants themselves, the organisms that use the plants, their caretakers, that means you, and the overall structure of a garden changes over time. Okay, so it's going to change. It's not a one and done. It's continually adding things over time. Start with keystones, then you can add things that aren't keystones, but who knows? Maybe they do more than we know. And that's the beauty of it, tip of the iceberg. So imagine if you're building a house. The keystone plant species are like the load-bearing walls, essential for the structure and the stability of the entire building. Once the walls are in place, then you can add other components like doors, floors, windows, rugs, carpets, paintings, representing the various plant and animal species that the habitat supports. I love pink flowers. I'm a sucker for pink. I love pink. And so I add lots of bulbs, and bulbs are another easy plant as well, because they're kind of, these are, and the brodeas, these are kind of like daffodils. They come up, they bloom, and then they wither away and they disappear. But these do not like water at all during the summer. They like a nice dry soil. So super drought tolerant. And you can like tuck these in everywhere. And they are beautiful. Lots of different kinds of Brodea species. So once your keystones are in the fall is the best time to plant these brodeas and other of our native bulbs. We have lots and lots of different kinds. And so that's how you flesh out your design is think of decorating a house once you have the foundation and the load-bearing walls in place. What's the best time to plant California natives? Fall through spring to take advantage of the cool, rainy weather. So this is my front garden, and you can see I took this picture after the rain. I've got the Douglas iris here, the Iris douglasii, planted in with some monkey flower here. This is a variety of Douglas iris called Canyon Snow, so it has a nice white flower that's blooming right now, as a matter of fact. It's gorgeous. And then a variety of monkey flower, which is white. So you can customize your native plant garden. It doesn't have to look dry and desiccated. You know, it can be lush looking. I mean, Douglas irises, I plant these all up and down the quarter because these are super easy to grow. They grow without water during the summer. They store water in their fleshy roots, and so that's why I use them a lot because they're super easy, and you can get more plants from these. You can divide these up and spread them around. So super economical to use Douglas iris. Monkey flower, the mimulus or diplicus, as they call it now, they keep changing the scientific names, come in just reds, yellows, pinks, whites, oranges, just a really nice, versatile flower. And so, you know, give yourself time. You don't have to do it all at once. How do I start? Start with one thing, and then remember that that dynamic beauty will unfold over time. And among the wonderful things provided when you plant native plants is that you're providing opportunities and resources for organisms to complete their life cycles and to move that moisture through the environment. Okay, so not only do the native plants conserve moisture and use less moisture, they're also making it available to other life. And so when you allow time for those biological processes to take place, you know, by leaving the leaves, leaving the seed heads, and really just not doing anything besides weeding after you get your plants in during the wintertime, you'll see things like these are a couple of the Icaricia acmen, the acmen blue butterfly, which lays its eggs here on the coastal buckwheat, the Eriogonum latifolium. This is at the Hopkins Avenue Garden. And this is two butterflies doing a mating dance over there. And that's the stuff that you get treated to when you plant things that like to lay their eggs on a plant, and they don't destroy the plant at all. These plants look great all the time, and you have these beautiful little creatures dancing around your ecologically friendly planting, super moisture friendly, drought tolerant species that they love. And you're literally planting life when you plant these gardens. So some final thoughts here. As your understanding of how planting California natives both saves water and helps the environment, so does your ability to optimize the power of your native garden keystone species, leading to an abundance of life, as well as enhancing your role in caring for nature's complex beauty. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and we can take some questions. Let me turn my camera back on so you can see my face.
Do you want me to read that to you, Juanita?
My soil is heavy clay. Why isn't my camera going back on? Oh, start video. Let me turn my face back on. There I am. Hey, how's it going? Heavy clay. Do I need to amend it? Dig extra big holes? Yes. So, you know, again, you know, dig during the winter time. It really sucks to plant uh, during the rainy season in heavy clay because it's hard work. But if I run into a really clay situation, um, there are plants that like to be in a more clayey environment. Um, and but just to make it easier on myself, what I will do when I said amend sparingly is I will use something like a cactus mix that you can get at the nursery to kind of like mix in to the planting soil, the original soil that's there. But I do like to dig a pretty big hole. And what Calscape actually has a really nice section on planting techniques that goes into a little bit more detail than what I can give, and I would recommend going to the calscape.org site. They recommend actually planting a a square hole, which is something I didn't know. That's something that I think that they just updated that with. Um, for some reason, I can't remember what it was, but I do like to make the holes pretty big, and I don't like the soil, the sides of the hole to be um, like super solid. I like to loosen up the sides so that the roots can get in there and grow into those areas. So you can definitely amend a little bit, but very sparingly because those plants are going to run into that native soil um, outside of that area. We have a lot of California wild rose or Rosa californica. I love Rosa californica. I love that plant. And I like it because it is such a good habitat plant. It feeds so many different species of moths and butterflies. And it's also a good barrier plant as well um, for, if you want to keep people out of things, thorny plants are really helpful. And it's also good for birds when they nest because that um, help those thorny plants help protect them against um, predators. What you can do, because those spread by runners, is that you can like dig up the runners and put them other places. And I also like to layer plants in and use like things like vines. So some vines that I really like, there's Lathyrus vestitus, the Pacific pea, which it'll take like 2 or 3 years to bloom, but it has a beautiful like sweet pea-like flower in pink. Beautiful plant. It also fixes nitrogen because it's in the pea family that grows up through my other plants. So those plants can provide scaffolding for other things, and you can get this wonderful kind of a tapestry effect with things. So I could continue on about the wild rose, but you're lucky that you have that. So build upon that as a keystone plant. That you're very lucky to now add some other things in there. Uh,
Juanita,
yeah.
can I just ask about pruning them? Is that something you should do? Because I know they can get really quite large, right?
In my experience with ours, I have not seen them get super tall. Um, I have some planted at the Island Drive garden. I have some in my front yard as well. And for me, it doesn't get much taller than maybe 2 feet tall. But if you have it getting into a pathway, um, or in a place where it might be getting scratched, you can snip it back. Um, but I haven't run into that as an issue yet.
Oh, I must be confusing it with a different rose then.
Yeah, so other roses I know can be really vigorous. We have some non-native roses in our yard, and I have tried digging those suckers out, and they just keep coming back. And they can get very leggy. The climbing roses, especially, can be can be kind of monster plants. I was told previous owner used salt to kill weeds. Will that affect my ability to plant natives? No, I would go for it, and just think that maybe, um, especially if you put down a nice layer of mulch to start with, and then as that gets incorporated into the soil, because organisms in the soil will eat the mulch and pull it down, and then let the plants drop their leaves, the deciduous ones, and just leave those in place. That will help with any sort of soil issues that you have. And that's especially also helpful if you have that heavy clay soil too, is that you want that leaf matter to really build up over time. Because, I mean, if you leave that leaf matter in place for years and years and years, that ecosystem will become extremely rich in organisms, and you will have everything from salamanders living in there, um, to all kinds of other things. Um, do I have other stories of plant collaborations? Ah, yes. So yes. There's a great thing about oak shallow roots giving water to other adjacent native plants. Yes, so I actually picked up this tip from the Calscape site where they talk about this specifically. The toyon, the heteromelies arbutifolia, that's one that those roots get together and the oak says, "Hey, you," and the toyon says, "Hello," and they say things to each other. Then the toyon passes on stuff to things like the sages, the salvias, and so on and so forth. Um, people say, I'm worried about planting in those shallow areas. I don't want to disturb the oak roots. If you plant things that are really small under oaks, that's how to go. So if you can get a 4-inch pot to plant, that's perfect. You can plant seeds under oaks. Um, I try to get, whenever I plant things, I try to get the smallest pot possible because I don't like to dig big holes. Uh, Yes, remove your weed barriers. Thank you for asking that. Because your weed barriers basically just don't work, I find. And weeds grow right up through those. Those break down and leave plastic in the soil, and in the environment. And you're going to have things that are trying to burrow through it to nest in the soil, and they can't get through. So yes, remove those weed barriers, um, and let everything do its thing. I can't tell you how many times I've seen artificial turf with weeds growing through it. It always just makes me laugh. Um, how to get the recording? Yes, it will be on the Bosca YouTube channel again, probably in a week or two, I would guess, whenever it's put up there. And again, I have a lot of other lectures that I've given, so you can go and uh, see some of my other presentations that I've done. Um, Bay Area natives that add fall color. Ah, yes. One lovely one for fall color is goldenrod. And I really like that because it is kind of a keystone species. It's super attractive for a lot of like bumblebees, and it feeds a lot of different butterfly and moth species. It can be a little aggressive in terms of getting spreading into a wet area. So if you have a drier area, goldenrod is really great. Another Bay Area native, it's actually more of a Southern California coastal species, is bladderpod, or Paratoma arborea. So bladderpod blooms all year long with yellow flowers. So that will bloom constantly. But, again, looking for other colorful things, you can also go back to Calscape to take a look to see what they recommend for fall bloomers. One other native is the Jaucenaria, which is our or epilobium that blooms during the fall. And some people call it the native fuchsia, but it's not a fuchsia. Those come in like hot orange pink colors, a hot orange, white, and it's also something that blooms when the hummingbirds are around. It's like a hummingbird magnet. So those are a few goodies that you could try. Um, and some things, will start blooming, do their flush of bloom, and then like kind of peter off during the year and give you sporadic blooms. Like uh, some of the sages will do that, and um, trying to think, some of the mallows. Oh yeah, yes, the Malva ashergentiflora, which is actually a plant from the Channel Islands. Um, it's mostly evergreen. She gets a little more deciduous during the latter part of the summertime, but she will bloom pretty much around all year long with these pink hibiscus type flowers. So if you don't see something that's really super local to this area, if it's still a California native, I'd say go for it. I bring in plants from Southern California as well as Northern California because I'm always experimenting to see, how they get along with each other. But there are certain associations of plants. I try to get that established first, and then I start introducing different things. So you can always, like, once you get that keystone to start with, then start adding in those things um, and seeing how they work together. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at just just how much there is. Another thing for fall color is a plant called, now you got me going, I can't stop talking, Lewisia. And Lewisia is kind of a succulent type of plant. And you find these in nurseries all the time in like 4-inch pots. They're super cheap. Um, and you can divide those up. And those tend to bloom later in the fall, and they come in like hot pinks and yellows and oranges. And as succulents, I've seen these things growing, like I went to Pinnacles one April and literally growing on a vertical surface. They were growing in amongst a bunch of mosses. So these things don't get watered except for rainfall. So succulents are a great way to go for that fall color, like a Lewisia, which will bloom, late fall and into the winter. Um, there are there are different succulents that are more colorful than others. Some of the various native Dudleas, um, some are dark green, some are more reddish, some are kind of a celadon color. So you can introduce color that way. Um, the toyon, you can get color, maybe not from a bloom, but the red berries that are left there. So, it just depends on your personal preference. What are your color choices? What do you like? You can look for things that have a nicely colored foliage, things that have nice berries on them. Um, but that's up to the personal preference. Again, I would like to invite everybody to come to our Earth Day event on the 21st, which is a Sunday, at the Rinconada Library here in Palo Alto. On the 21st from 1 until 4. I'll be there with my volunteers who will be at the various pollinator gardens to answer questions. And I'll be giving away succulents. So if you want some of those coastal goodies, I'll have some freebies. But it should be good. There should be a lot of resources for people. I think there's also some people maybe from um, the water district coming. I don't know. There's like 25 different groups now. It's kind of taken on a life of its own, this event. But yeah, no, a lot of good questions. So thank you everybody for posing those.
Great questions. I'm really happy to see that there was a lot of questions asked. And I did post in the chat the link to the landscape videos, the Bosco landscape videos, if you're interested. And my head seems to be chopped off. Oh, there we go. So thanks everyone for attending. If there's no other questions, I think we'll go ahead and close it for the night. And appreciate you attending, and hopefully you'll be back next week for our succulent class. So have a wonderful night. Oh, we have one more.
Oh,
Just a thank you. Oh, you're welcome.
yeah.
All right. Have a great night, everybody. Bye-bye.